All right, so P Diddy, a guy who uh, I'm not all that crazy about P Diddy. Not a fan of his. The persona that is portrayed through his uh, so-called arts uh, and uh, and the and through media and so on and so forth. I'm not really all that crazy about him about that projection. Him as a person, I don't really know him as a person, so I can't say I can't say what he's like in person. But the projection of this bad boy, playboy and kind of like you know uh, the gangster sort of persona that's pushed. That's I think that's a bad tactic and not very good for being a somebody who's supposed to be a mentor. Who should be a mentor. Promoting self confidence, but self confidence and drive for societal advancement. But aside from that, he did something that I completely and utterly agree with. Something I've talked about before when I'm talking about general strike, as well as political voting and endorsement, is withholding and holding it for hostage. The vote for hostage. I completely and utterly agree. It's something that should be done, and it's a bait and switch that's been going on for decades, and it's something that just irritates the hell out of me to see that people continuously falling for this and getting really nothing out of it, and actually going reverse from getting anything good out of it. You can talk about social, gay rights and all that. That's all great, but when you have a few things that are good, gay or race or whatever, but then you have like dozens of other policies which actually completely waters down or completely absolutely obstructs all the so-called progress. Then how good can it be? It's completely worthless if the way I look at it. When you have judges and DAs and police chiefs and all sorts of and agencies that are actually putting in policies and regulations and statutes that work against it. What have you actually achieved? Nothing. It's it's a lot of it's a lot of talk. It's basically nothing. It's a fart in a gale. So I completely agree with P Diddy or Sean Combs on uh, on what he was talking about, and I'm glad to see somebody within the black community talking about this, and I think you should go a step further and go after that and go after that the black guy who endorsed Biden and the black politician who I forget it, I forget the guy's name, but he basically this guy's a that guy's a complete scam artist criminal, and he should be completely and utterly ostracized and vilified. Um, and because he's anyways, but you know, I think he should go for further, and I think P Diddy should go after him and others for for doing. And oh, by the way, Stacey Abrams, I've done videos about her, and she's another example. What I've learned about her after her loss, because I actually made videos about sticking up for her and endorsing her and saying she should have she won, and there was legitimately there were things that were done to basically take that made it so that she didn't win her position. But regardless, she sounds like she could be a carbon copy for Hillary Clinton, except she's got black skin. I mean, it's ridiculous. Which is why I constantly talk about it doesn't matter what your skin is and so on and so forth. The game is universally should be our skin in the game should be for policies that that uh, moves us forward, that progresses us forward, uh, not the skin in the game being this surface cosmetic nonsense. So, anyways, the other thing I want to talk about is the Michael Moore film, which you can find on YouTube for free, and it's about the renewable energy and green energy and controversy surrounding it. Now, I watched that, and the only thing that I found controversial is that it kept on stressing, uh, you know, and it's because the way they kept on bringing it up on several times, and it paints a picture that that where there's too many humans and so on and so forth. And while they don't say, there must be a culling of the human herd, the destructive human herd on the planet, they don't word it like that, but the way it's constantly brought up, it paints a picture and gives a fear that we're overcrowded. There's too many humans and so on and so forth. That's the only issue I had with that film. Um, what the stupid controversy is about how green energy isn't all that green. How big corporations and so on and so forth still a lot of those green energies actually goes back to the fossil fuel companies itself. That's the that's the level of stupidity and controversy that's in there. It, it's not like that old saying, "Don't shoot the messenger." Well, the messenger is being shot for pointing out the obvious flaws and looking for other. It's like it's like with all conservative talking points. It's and thinking. It's basically flawed down to its core. core being, hey, I'm looking out for my own self comfort in the present, in the near present. That's basically what it boils down to. You know, my comfort, my security, my existence, and that's why conservatism is a horrible ideology. It's a horrible way of thinking. And libertarianism, the same thing. Um, this liberalism, it's flawed because it can go it can flip flop, but it at the core is preserve my present security. That's what it comes down to. You know, and if it's convenient, then yes, let's move forward. Let's move forward on social issues rather than the systemic issues within the social fabric. That of politicians and business people and officials and media and education promoting and legislating all the harmful ignorance, which self promotes and preserves those who are essentially criminals, who won't hesitate to use deception, murder, and everything else that you can possibly think of to get ahead. And they'll lie, cheat, steal, whatever is necessary to do it. Bankers. That's the ones that do like J.P. Morgan Chase. You know, J.P. Morgan was an outright criminal. Uh, the Vanderbilts were outright criminals. The Rothschilds were outright criminals. This is where the term robber barons came up from, and it's an old term. It's a tactic, a criminal tactic, an ideology that's been around for thousands of years. So understand, and we see examples of how people during the time of the during the time when railroads were starting to build up, and all those who are famous for being involved in it, how they did things that any person would consider common sense and common sense and natural law to be criminal, worthy of being put into jail and being punished with death and so on and so forth. I mean, the history guy, a channel you can find on YouTube, he did a great piece on robber barons of American robber barons during the time. You should check it out. It's very reminiscent of what we're seeing in modern politics, and what it's almost a mirror of what bankers and corporations and all these others are doing, and the politicians are, this is the sort of crap that we should be paying attention. It's history guy talks about how judges were bought and basically bribed for two sides. During the during the time of the railroads, early railroads, and how they would have court orders from both sides. This is why the Republicans and the Democrats are doing the same thing, because they're bought and paid for, and it was outright bribery then, and it's outright bribery now, and it's there. And those should be high crimes that should be putting these people in jail, but it's not happening. Why? Because we have legitimated and given exception to the criminal felony and high crimes that the politicians and business interests and quote unquote business interests are doing. They're literally robbing. The bank with the so-called stimulus bills. They did it during Obama's time. They're doing it now during the coronavirus and economic devastation. It's how is that not obvious? We should be telling if you have family members who are police or in the FBI or whatever, you should be telling them, hey, get together with your fellow police and other law enforcement, and arrest the judges, arrest the politicians, arrest Jamie Dimon, arrest arrest Trump, arrest Mnuchin, arrest basically clean out house. That's what they should be doing. They should be walking into the DOJ. They should be walking into the DOD. They should be walking into the White House. They should be walking into the Congress. They should be walking into the state areas. They should be walking into to NSA and Homeland. They should be doing this and just putting them in chains and dragging them out. That's what should be taking place. But we don't have that. And until we recognize that these people are the high criminals who have been putting people in jail because of their policies so that they can make money. We've seen that in the example of private prisons. And it's not just black and brown people, it's white people. We're all Americans. Americans are being put in jail for crimes that shouldn't be crimes. It's it's like, are we nothing more than thank you, sir. May I have are we nothing more than that? Where is our own personal outrage, our own personal courage and principles to stand up for our own personal injury by the criminal nature of those who are supposed to be the representation for our leadership in government and in business? Why aren't we arresting the shareholders and owners of Walmart and the corporate board of Walmart? Why aren't we arresting them? Why aren't we arresting the shareholders of and corporate heads of Wells Fargo? Why aren't we arresting doing the same for GM, Ford, Chrysler, Facebook, Google, Intel, Apple, the New York Times, for CBS, NBC, ABC. Why aren't we doing the same for these think tanks that are funded by these criminals that start up things like ALEC and all these? Why aren't we doing this? We should be crushing these criminals. They should be tarred and feathered, and they should be strung up because they have literally done the biggest bank heists that affect the entire country for decades upon decades in an overt way. Obama did it. He should be arrested. The Bushes did it. They should be arrested. Reagan, he's dead, but, all those affiliated with Reagan. Clintons. Nixon. It doesn't matter. They should all be gone after. We should be going after we should be going after Warren. We should be going after Manchin. We should be going after McConnell, Graham. We should be going after all of them. But we're not. I don't see the necessity to wait for something so overtly catastrophic that we find ourselves in panic and then not knowing who to blame, who to legitimately blame, and that we all suffer. More and more of us suffer to the point that we got more than half the country. Do we need to have more than half, or a half, or more than a half of the country suffering before we come to consensus and say, okay, the problem are these, and we are partially responsible for allowing this to happen, and so we must now come together? Or do we move on it now and then work together to find resolutions and for all the harm? I say we move on it now. I say we all come to understand that it is us who pay and the high criminals who extract and punish and harm and steal and cheat. Because that's what it comes to. Because Breitbart is funded by these criminals. The Daily Caller is funded by these criminals. The Daily Mail, the Federalist, they've infected and they're funding, partially funding Democracy Now! They're partially funding TYT. They're partially funding all sorts of. They're doing both sides. They're doing both sides. The Rising on the Hill was perfect example of of this bipartisan funding. Why? Because it's all misinformation. It's all disinformation. It's all to keep us divided. It's all to keep us distracted. We can't trust. We can't trust NPR. We can't trust PBS. You can't trust BBC. Can't trust any of them. I mean, there's a lot of crap coming out of the Intercept as well. Now, the Intercept, the Democracy Now, and TYT are are better, but there are flaws. They're not as overt, blatant, but that's the problem. And we must stop the superstructure that allows this to happen. And that means that if you serve a capacity in law enforcement, you have to throw out all these biased, unequal, inequitable so-called laws, statutes, and regulations, and it's come to say, no, these are unequal, and it doesn't matter if it's was made to be biased for against black people or brown people. It can still be used and has been used against us. And it is corrosively wearing away even our security, our present. That's what it has to come down to. And that should open up clarity and give clarity so that understanding of that gives us the consensus to go after the real criminals.